Alright, what's up, chat? We had a little bit of a false start. YouTube seems to be having some kind of issues right now, but I think we're actually live this time. If you guys are seeing us and hearing us, let us know, so I know that we're actually live this time. I think it's like the third time that I've hit the go live button. But hopefully we can actually do our discussion on the orcs now. So, previously we talked about the Codex on Slam Sector a little bit from a more casual perspective, because none of us are very competitive players. None of us are what you would call good at the game, I guess. So, we have brought in somebody to help us out. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, thank you for having me on. And I'm a part of War Tactics, where we like to cover the meta of orcs as a whole. We like to cover all the in and outs of the rules of 40k, but through the orcs lens and perspective. Orcs do have a hard learning curve, and I like to try to make up to that. You know, we stress about competency, not competitive, right? We care that you play the way you want to play to your optimal capabilities with the units you want to use, but understanding 40k as in the generalship of it, and orcs and how you have to present them as orcs. So we aren't a competitive channel strictly. We do some hobby stuff here and there, and we're hoping to get into the lore as well.
Nice. So, before we get super into just the orc stuff, let's get to know you a little bit. How long have you been playing 40k?
So I've been playing since 8th edition. I started in the winter, before the world went dark with the Rona, So, I got into it. Bad circumstances happened, and I was in a car accident, and then I wandered into a Warhammer store because I'm like, what is the Gears of War guy doing here fighting Skaven? I'd been playing Vermintide and such. So I was like, let me wander in here and see what's going on with these guys. And so from there, I got into it, and I took on orcs, and I ended up getting my 2 cousins into it. So those were my practice partners during the lockdowns, actually.
Nice. Did you pick up orcs first? Was that your first army?
Yes, orcs were my first love and my only true love, even though I did dabble into other armies.
What of the other armies do you think was your favorite?
So I had Custodes went second, just for the bar to entry being low, right? Mm-hmm. And I kind of wanted to get out to RTTs, and orcs were, very intimidating, as I was not a avid hobbyist at any point. I was what you would call more of a meathead, and so I was coming into 40k with no hobby skills, and I still have some only, but I took on Custodes, got them nice and ready so I can hit the tables, and then eventually I picked up Death Guard, Death Watch, Imperial Fist, Astra Militarum, but specifically a Fulton Pestis Scions army. So I did end up trading the Death Guard for my current Tyranids army, and I did get rid of my Death Watch army, but I give them all a valid try.
Yeah. Are you trying to stay capped at a certain number of armies, or were you just not vibing with some of those?
Yes. I was really trying to be capped at 5, because I wanted to be able to pick them up and actually put on a game and not mess up all their rules, which is more or less kind of where it was going.
That's fair, yeah. Would you say that you kind of got into it with a competitive mindset? Like you went into it expecting to go to tournaments and stuff for this?
Yeah, once I found out about it, background from before as a military vet and a little bit of along the lines of slight meathead, not fully, but enough to where I did mostly combat sports for training and such, and gym, blah blah blah. And so taking on a hobby like this where everybody has a really even keel temperament and good manners and good behavior, I was like, oh, when I roll that wand, and people were like, oh dude, what is this? And I was like, wait a second, I like you guys, I'm sorry I'm making you feel uncomfortable. So I actually had to become more better with my social skills with Warhammer, but
Sure.
That's also why people advised me towards orcs, right? They were like, hey, you should play these guys, you do fit them, So,
yeah.
So there was that.
Nice.
And so I did think that, I would end up trying to play at tournaments, because most of the other things I did were a little competitive.
Nice. Cool. All right. Well, with all that stuff in mind, before we get super into all the details of the Codex and everything, just in one sentence, can you kind of sum up your thoughts about the new Codex?
Possibly the best balanced Codex via detachments that GW might have ever written, just because the fact that they can hit essentially 5, maybe 4 out of 6 detachments being very playable, and all being those 4 being in question to be able to perform and prevent at a tournament, even if it is just an RTT level, right? And I would say it's probably 5, because if you're playing 1,000 points, I bet you can take the hunt to an RTT like that in Merc. So it's pretty interesting that at least every detachment is pretty well balanced, and I wouldn't say every data sheet because tank busters, but we're in a good spot.
So real good internal balance. We can talk about
detachments.
Because of the detachments. Cool.
Yes.
We'll talk about a little bit of the external balance later. Do you have any kind of spicy hot takes about the codex at all?
Okay. Well, hot takes, I would say even myself overblow Blue Meganob slightly, as we have to keep in mind that their offensive potential is very, very much lacking. And on the non-wall turn, they do kind of get picked up, right? I would also say Bully Boys comes out to be thought as the most competitive one, but I think as time goes on, people will wander back to Warhorde and understand why Goffs or Sustain 1 has been kind of the iconic rule of Orks for several editions as it is. It just synergized with our faction as a whole and what we want to do. And the stratagems in Warhorde help us quite a bit, and they're overall just balanced into a lot of different data sheets. So I would say Bully Boys comes off as the, we'll say a bit easier to perform with, but I have a feeling Warhorde's going to make its way back up once Meganobs get hit once, possibly.
Yeah, I keep hearing stuff about take 100 mans, take as many as you possibly can,
and get out OC'd. No,
yeah. So you would you say that Warhorde is the best detachment? You think?
I would say in the hands of the most competent players, yes. In the hands of us, the other people, guys who are just good or just playing casually and such, Bully Boys will take you over the edge, and just having double wall against your peers will kind of place you with high leverage.
Hell yeah. Have you had any games with the new book yet?
Yeah, I have, and they've been fun. I mean, it feels good, even though we are missing some things. So, and I felt what we're missing too.
What do you think we're missing?
Well, shooting. We're missing, the shooting. Right?
Okay.
We're very much missing the shooting phase. Not talking about Dread Mob, but then they're missing the combat phase and durability in some ways. So that's a different topic. But overall, we're just missing shooting. The fact that everybody was plugging and playing Captain Badrook and the boys was for a reason. It was, you want to participate in every phase of 40K, especially because Orks aren't necessarily the best in combat. I had a guest on, Steven. Shout out Steven in our Discord. He, great player. And he kind of worded it as, Orks bully armies that aren't excellent at combat, and then we kind of get punched up on armies that are excellent in combat. So it's kind of weird how that works out. And then we mean data sheet per data sheet, point per point. That's what we mean by that.
Yeah. And, I got a taste of that firsthand on Monday. I apologize. I want to put out a formal apology for what I did on Monday with that stomp. I want the world to know I see the error of my ways, and I wholeheartedly apologize for making you all watch that, because that was rough.
I think the Orc community is very sweet for not jumping on you, because I know some other factions, if you would have done that with the Prime Custodes Codex, boy, those are Prime Custodes players on you, or Necron players. They never let you down, but Orcs not, dude. I think every Orc player's had a game like that where they're like, oh, I probably should not have done that.
We only got 1 or 2 mean comments, and I choose to believe those weren't from Orc players, so.
Yeah. That's right. Just some random people wandered in there.
We're going to try it again next Monday with the lessons that I learned from this Monday. So hopefully that goes a little better.
Hey, we're never beaten, we just get to try again.
Yeah. So, from the games that you've played so far, is there anything that kind of surprised you that is a little different from your initial expectations going into the book release?
So I would say not having the Nabluth Wand Banner, Captain Badrook are actually 2 very important kind of different purposes in the game.
Yeah.
We'll say not having a shooting phase and participating makes us very vulnerable to being screened and stuff that world eaters typically have to deal with that sucks for them. But they do have ways to get around it to a certain extent by being extra fast or being able to bring allies and stuff like that. Yet we just straight up have to suffer of not having reliable output for shooting. So we kind of have to deal with running into screens and stuff like that. And I would say the Knob with Wall Banner having that on-turn threat range and being able to pressure early in the game, we're kind of missing that too. So Bully Boys kind of helped compensate for that, but that's one
Yeah.
detachment. And these detachments tell you what units to play specifically, other than Warhorde will say. So that being, said, it doesn't go in tandem with fast pressure units necessarily.
Yeah. And Orcs didn't really get like a dedicated shooting detachment, really, right?
I mean,
Um,
Dread Mob, but then right, you want to call Dread Mob shooting, but then at the same time, it's like, these are very specific units that can shoot, and then some of your other units get no buffs at all for that, or you can threaten to kill yourself to try to get them right. So we can talk about those combos too, but
yeah.
there's combos on there that I can make my boys have a mech, and I can get sustained or lethal, but then out of my 20 boys, 5 are dying to hazardous. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've been messing around with the Ludas and the mechs and the Get Finder goggles and stuff like that. I might start dabbling with some other tech there. We'll see how that goes.
That's really legit. The Ludas, Get Finder goggles. I would say if you're playing on terrain that allows for plunging fire, it's actually at that point it's real. If you can
Yeah.
get EP -2, ignoring cover on those auto cannons, that's very, very real. That's a different conversation than if you're having with someone like me, where the terrain I play on either has completely blocking second floor line of sight
Hmm.
for the most part, or they just simply don't even use plunging fire rule because no terrain's like tall enough, 5 inches, greater than
Yeah.
5 inches.
I find that a lot of people kind of forget that that's even a rule because it just doesn't come up very often.
Yeah, so it's like some people will go online and they'll tell you like Ludas are where it's at. I'm telling you, but they're playing a different game if they can shoot off the second floor line of sight and have plunging fire than someone who's playing on like GW terrain or second floor line of sight blocking with no plunging fire access. Then you're talking about walking into lanes or dismounting from a truck or getting +1 to hit from a truck. These are different contexts to that discussion of that unit combo. But that's very much for the Ork Codex as a whole. Is the terrain's really going to dictate what detachment works for you and what units work for you, and that's what the conversation we need to have, and that's something we try to have on our Discord or in our community is have context for what you're talking about when you're presenting ideas or dismantling someone else's, because you don't know what battlefield they're playing on or what specific units they're going into. So that's a real factor as well that people always overlook, even at competitive level sometimes.
Yeah, you'll see people going at it like on Reddit or in YouTube comments and stuff with just no idea what kind of terrain somebody else is playing on. Because I know that stuff like that is wildly regional too. Like I know in the UK they play on totally different terrain than we do.
UKPC, I mean,
Yeah.
no offense, they kind of look like they have some open shooting lanes sometimes, and then I would say I think it's the WTC, which I have a set of that. They play
Mhm.
with very thin L-shaped walls, so you can very easily stage and then walk through, and it's big, complete blocking on the whole base. Is there's a whole big L that someone blockades the vast majority of that base that we all use nowadays, compared to a GW building, which will maybe cover, we'll say a little over around 3/4 of that term base, which means harder to line up sometimes. You can get a line of fire on there too. There's different conversations. You can move cavalry more easily through those terrain. There's stuff like that. So these are all topics that people forget.
Mhm. Yeah, and so I mean, when you build lists and stuff, is that like, do you have whatever terrain you're going to be playing on in mind?
I
Presumably.
actually do. I very much know that some of the TOs in the area where I do scout what terrain I'm going to play on before I go to an event, if I can. And I own the legitimate GW terrain, like cathedrals that they don't sell anymore.
Hmm.
So even with that in mind, I have that to practice on at home for fun. But most people don't have that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I try to keep that in mind as well. That's why I never give very, very strong, stringent rules to my list building or what people are doing, because what might work for me will not work for you for various reasons. I respect your intelligence to distinguish these reasons, right?
Hmm. For sure. Well, do you have any kind of? Is there any combos or like secret tech in the book that you like the best, or you think is more competitive or fun than others?
So, I mean, there's a couple conversations for that. I
Hmm.
would say one that people always talk about, we'll say on the internet, but if you're just, someone watching casually, there is what we, like to call the Zag Struck leap pad, where you scout the truck 9 inches. Then on your actual turn, when you move, you don't move the truck at all. You simply dismount Zodstruck. Another unit jumps through a piece of terrain, advances within 3 inches of the truck, jumps in the truck, and then the truck actually gets to continue to move. So you're leap padding that unit. You're giving it its full movement in advance and the truck's movement possibly advance. And then that's
Interesting.
kind of like the leap pad. So you're covering huge swaths of distance here with that. So it's not just you're using Zagstruck in his unit to run out and scout. You're taking the truck with you, staging it so that someone else can jump on it like a flying nimbus and take off. Right. So that's one that's just kind of slept on, we might have to tech more into. Let's see. I do the looted one we always cover. We already covered. And we know all about the hunt ones. We'll say those are quite interesting. I think it's very cool that we get to hunt, to scout and everything. It's just the hunt's very limited on everything else it wants to do. One of the old combos that I really love that I'm still appreciating is Gaz lethal within range of a Beast Snaggle Boy unit and rerolling the entire hit roll to fish for the 5s and 6s for sustain and lethal on that. So I think that's another reason why I think Warhorde's nasty is you optimizes Gaz, and Gaz was already kind of an anchor, and now he's becoming even more of a focal point. The fact that him and his Mega Knives become a true threat to most things in the game by their existence is very important to us with our lack of shooting and building around him kind of because of that, because of damage reduction and stuff.
So do you think, is Gaz kind of like an auto take or like dependent on...
specific, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if you see a lot of the competitive lists bringing Gaz with Warhorde or Bully Boys. I'm still not sold on Bully Boys. I feel like you could still pull off 3 Mega Knob bricks in Bully Boys without Gaz, or so I don't think Gaz is really there unless you're going to bring 20-man units of knobs or something that they can actually appreciate his lethal aura twice, right? First unit goes in, does it, die. Second unit goes in and actually does it correctly, right? Again, so
makes sense.
And hold on, it's Eddie means Wartsnega for the leap head. Yes, I do. Sorry, I don't know.
What Zodgrod.
Yeah, okay. I was saying Zodgrod Wartsnega. Was I saying Zagstruck?
You're saying Zagstruck, but I knew what you meant.
Hey, I love Zagstruck. I'm not even forgot about that, dude. I'm sad he's gone too.
Pour one out for Zagstruck.
Everybody's looking like, where's my Zagstruck? There he is in the Lord. No, yeah. Thanks, Wop. I appreciate you, buddy. Yeah, for some reason I was saying Wartsnega, so I'm not saying Wartsnega, so yeah. Wartsnaga's a funky dude, and I wouldn't say that I was running him often prior to this codex by any means, but I'm aware of what he does, and we made combo videos about what he does, so we'll see if he starts making it reliably on lists, right? But that's a combo that's fun for people.
Yeah, I know.
Prior, so it's an old combo, but more important now, possibly.
Did he have the same abilities in the index?
Yep, he's unchanged.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I don't remember hearing about him until the codex came out. Like, nobody talked about him.
Oh yeah, it was because 80 points is outrageous.
Oh, how many points is he now?
He's 80. He's still expensive.
Oh, so he's still very expensive. Okay.
It's really about other armies now have cheaper infiltrators or scout maneuvers, and we don't have shooting to screen people off us. They're sorry to shoot away screens that are trying to get away from us. Oh, you move in front of my flash gets, I'll overwatch you now. Now you can't stage and block me. But now it's like, oh no, I got to get out there before you. So he's become more appealing. Commandos are quite expensive, even though they're arguably in the same conversation because they cost so much. But the Wartsnega lead pad is what gives him that extra value right there that people tend to go more towards him. Shout out to Snickrat.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are talking about just taking solo Snickrats now. So like, what do you do with him? What's kind of the play with taking a solo Snickrat?
Solo Snickrat's super efficient, helpful, and he goes on just about every list. As having a lone op that doesn't get shot is very important in this game and shooting matchups. So it depends on what I'm going against, right? I've messed up and placed him just like you did with the Stomper with World Eaters within range once in a while. Yeah. I'm like, oh god, yeah, I forgot. No, I made this huge charge. I didn't pre-measure you well enough. I gave you a 9 and I forgot you can auto 6 automatically, and it, you rolled a 6 actually. So oops. So
yeah.
I would say with him, some matchups, you leave him in your deployment zone or your deployment zone in a corner to score if you pull that tactical card, right?
Yep.
You give him the opportunity to end up in enemy's deployment zone, or in some missions, you put him down first to stop enemy scouts and other infiltrators from moving in. So you maybe not first for scouts, but you'll find the enemy scouts and you'll place him there so they can't move within range of him. If something like 8-bound, that means he's going to die, but you did stop them from scouting 8 towards him because they cannot move within range of him if he gets in their way. So it's one of those things that he can be useful in that. He can move block lanes if someone wants to charge you down with something, a Thunderwolf Cavalry, a Mauler Fiend, anything like that that's actually kind of big and wants to come down a lane towards you, you can jump that Snickrat in the way for that reason. So And once or twice, he might kill a couple models or precision someone because he actually has the proper amount of orc attacks, which is 6.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I never considered using him to like block scout moves. That's interesting.
Yeah, and other infiltrators, because you don't want
Yeah.
those people to get on you. Of course, he'll get charged and killed, but he's actually there to be a sacrifice. That's why it's like pretty dope that he's only 85 points right now.
Yeah. Nice. That's very cool. So where do you think this codex kind of like stacks up competitively compared to all the other ones?
Competitively, if we're talking about like RTT level, right? There's different tiers of this competitive game that people kind of forget too. Your competitive RTT, I respect it. It's legit, but that's not the same as a GT level event. And your GT level event that's 30, 40 people is not the same as a 80 plus person event or 120 plus player event or a event that has a golden ticket to the GW championships level event, right? These are all different levels of, you're going to get different people that are different level of commitment on regularity to perform at these events sometimes. So you can gauge your own meta based off that, but keep those focal points in mind, right? I would say if we're just taking it all as a whole as it is, I'm going to guess. I think people are kind of slightly overestimating its full potential outside of Mega Knobs and Bully Boys really caring. So we're going to say at this moment, I'm giving it an 8. We'll say probably about an 8 because there are some tough, challenging matchups that people forget. People tend to forget about our predators. So many people are annoyed by us when they're like, orcs are strong. Orcs are S tier. I've seen that before. Prior, like last data slate before our codex came out, people were like, orcs are S tier. And I was like, I don't know, man. We have like 5 hard matchups. And then all of a sudden our win rate dropped to like the low 40s. So I think people forget our actual predators, and I don't think our predators have changed very much other than custodes. So I'm going to say an 8 just because bullies can straight up bully people at mid tables, at RTT levels, maybe at smaller GT levels as well. But for the most part, very, very high level players, they're going to like, we'll see what happens with Tau, where they just get a whole bunch of stuff that gets in your way and gets lethal and can just delay you enough and out OC you at the same time. We're like, oh, dang. So we'll see how that goes. Or will the orcs overcome that with boys is what I'm assuming. So
yeah. So you mentioned like Tau and Custodes. What are the other armies that you think are kind of tough matchups for orcs?
No, custodes are not anymore. They were.
I guess, yeah, previous Custodes, yeah.
I would say no, not anymore. They're not someone that you're teching for in your event. You're just kind of beating them up, as the world should be. So you got to think about Grey Knights for sure. Their Dread Knight list can do quite well. They also did get cheaper units, so you don't know if they'll start teching into Paladins, right? If they start bringing some Paladin units, they can out OC you. They have anti-infantry weapons. They can take access to the Armor of Contempt and kind of mitigate some of your punching potential. So this weird Grey Knights might be a factor. Their reactive movement, repositioning, so you get great lines of fire on you. They do suffer to a battle wagon, though, so be aware of that. World Eaters are going to be making a comeback if you're not fighting with something that has fight on death, right? They could just punch you up and then start making annoying trades and automatically taking the initiative from you. So if you're not playing Warhorde or Bully Boys, not having access to fight on death hurts against World Eaters. Chaos Knights, they're just being a hard skew of high toughness for cheap points, right? But I'd rather have a Chaos Knight for 30-point difference, whatever it is, or a Death Dread. Like, what the heck? How's that even a comparable conversation? It's not. So that's a weird matchup that sometimes can really mess you up as an orc player on certain missions. Imperial Knights is kind of like one of those sleeper gatekeeper ones that it's hard to beat them, but we can beat them. But it is actually difficult when you're a new and upcoming orc player and you're like, what's happening here with all this tough stuff? So we'll see. What are some of the other things? Necrons are still going to be a factor, but we actually do good into Necrons as a whole, especially with Gaz being so useful and vital. Being able to one-punch units of Necrons just by pure volume is something that they hate. So lethals between Gaz, double doing it once or twice, and having a bunch of dudes that can punch up into, we'll say, court. You can beat up the wraiths. You can run over Catans with the right combinations. We actually have good matchup into them, but we don't know exactly what they're going to tech into right now. So that's yet to come. But if you're, like I said, there's levels to this, right? Your local RTT player guy, there might be No, he might be the best Necron player, but then you go to GT level and you run into a T-Sun guy that just walks you, right? He just dog walks you with all his flamers, his additional movements. So T-Suns are another very hard matchup right there that I almost forgot to mention that I've been thinking about. So T-Suns are very difficult, but that also comes down to how many people play T-Suns. How many people are efficient with T-Suns, because they crumble under pressure. They're like glass cannons. So, and then Death Guard. Don't forget about Death Guard. Death Guard is still one of our predators that hasn't changed, right? So Death Guard hasn't changed. Stacking -2 to hit is brutal against us.
Yeah.
So that's why you just bring the Stompa. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, I don't think that's a bad call. I think you just always bring a Stompa, but that's just me. That's just me.
Yeah.
So I mean, against any of those armies, do you think there's anything that an Orc player could do, either just tactically or from the list building phase, to just kind of prepare for those kind of matchups?
So one thing you must always do is, no matter what list I advise you and fix your list online, no matter what you see from Auspex Tactics or what awesome tactics you learn from me or $1 Billion Clown Farm or whatever it may be, knowing the enemy's actual rules makes a big difference, right? A very high level player knows the enemy's rules and actually knows when someone is to the point that they know if they're out incorrectly playing them, right? To where you have to be able to call the enemy on what they're actually playing well or not. That way you can continue your game plan, because if you don't know their max potential in your head, you're going to mess up with what you're doing and what you're committing. So actually knowing other armies' rules does become a factor. If someone's beating you consistently, you need to know other rules. But then two, I would say understanding the combat phase to its max potential. And I know some people are like, wait a second, you didn't give a tactic on data sheets. That's because that actually is the Orcs' max potential, is utilizing movement, charges, pylons, consolidates, screening, auto-seeing, when to commit on a wall, board control, screening a deep strike. These are mistakes that we cannot afford to make. If you mess up your deep strike, screening your deep strike of a 2-man unit or one Caladius, we'll say one assassin, that assassin will run train through all of those backline units or whatever you have back there. Yeah. And it's just, most other armies are like, that's stupid. They're like, I'll kill you with my guns when I see you. We have nothing to shoot you with. We can't shoot back at you. So then they get to run rampant. So actually understanding the core mechanics of 40K and being on your P's and Q's, even if you want to play Orky, that's fine. Screen your backfield. Hey, you want to be Orky, that's fine. Screen your elite units from getting charged or piled into and also brought into a fight that they don't want to be in. You don't want your 20-man unit of boys getting tagged at the very end of their mob where they can't pile in enough that direction to kill that unit with, that rhino, and then all of a sudden your 20-man unit of boys is doing nothing. For example, that's one, right? You don't want to be move blocked from your 10-man unit of knobs actually getting into combat because the enemy understood positioning better than you. And you just made a willy-nilly charge. That's actually the truth on how you become very optimal with Orcs, is the basics, order of operations, because we're not best at anything other than playing the mission.
So know your enemy, know the fight phase.
Know the fight phase. Those are two, right? And then one video I really suggest that I recommend to people is how to run the boy mob. We have that on our channel on WoW Tactics, where we had a guest and he's ITC level champ. And he was one of the best players in 40K for a long time. And he was doing great with the Knob with Wall Banner. And me and him went on, how do you maximize a boy mob unit? And the whole point of that is it really shows you that a really top level Orc player is swinging his Orc units around the battlefield and tagging things and delaying in a way that other factions simply don't do or can't do.
Got it.
And that's because that's what we're really thinking about when we're playing, not just punching everything away.
Makes sense. Yeah, I went ahead and I dropped a link to that video in the chat there, so if anybody's interested in watching that, check that out. So if you guys in chat have any questions, feel free to drop them in there, and we'll take a look at them either at the end of the stream, or if they're real hard-hitting questions, we can go ahead and hit those as soon as they come up. But, so as far as this codex goes, do you think this is the best codex the GW's made so far?
Yeah, I would say very much so. What are we comparing them to? Space Marines, which is, I would say, actually quite proper codex. It's just they have a hard time balancing between very, very casual new players and having too many data sheets to a certain extent. So I think Space Marine book's actually quite solid. I really was already very appreciative of the Tyranid book. Now, some people might say they suck, and why'd you say them? They don't suck. Their data sheets kind of suck. Their rules are actually pretty cool and creative. Their stratagems are actually pretty dope. They just lack output and AP, kind of like we do, but they can't do the swinging things that we do with infantry and bodies the same way that we can as orc players, that we can kind of get over that loop. There's tactics that orcs employ at the higher levels that Tyranids simply can't do because we have good infantry and they don't, is kind of what it comes down to there. Oddly enough, we have a lot of good infantry. They have to use their monsters and they're getting blocked and terrained and da-da-da. Therefore, they have to have enough offensive potential to get through that, and they currently don't. So then they suffer for it.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, we got a question from Big Doza Go. Is there any orc shooting unit that is worth it or recommended?
I would say so. This is another detachment breakdown type thing, but
Yep.
As like a baseline, you're totally fine to integrating a couple flash kits on your list, the 5-man units. I don't know if we're gonna go more than 1 or 2 of those, but at 5 mans, but they're fine if you want to shoot at some scout or some here and there and chip things down. That does matter to a certain degree. Mech guns with bubble chuckers are fine. Tractor cannons, if you're trying to threaten some Primarchs, could be interesting. If you have a really annoying Angron, hitting them on force in the Dread Mob and getting sustain, and then devastating on 2+ is pretty ridiculous against fly units. So might be an interesting tech in the future with Tau. I don't know. Let's see. Other than like the Dread Mob options, if you're talking outside of the Dread Mob, I would say no, not really. Right? You're just really sticking to flash kits or using a truck as a mobile bunker, and then giving +1 to hit for the things that are inside the mobile bunker, and then they can shoot. And then of course the straight up Luda combo, which we talked about, that's in the Dread Mob. We talked about that earlier. That's a very legit shooting combination, but you're not doing that in other detachments unless you're playing with second floor line of sight blocking and you're getting punching fire. If you're doing that, I'm very proud of you. That's freaking awesome. I'm happy for you because you get an Overwatch unit, and I wish I had one. But if you're playing on people that don't have second floor line of sight blocking at those kind of tournaments, if you're not playing in the Dread Mob, Ludas are not where it's at. You can argue with me. It's okay. I don't mind. I like to fight. I'm an orc, but Ludas are not where it's at unless it's under certain conditions. And then flash kits are just doing a different purpose, where they're a general purpose unit. They're a data sheet that it will shoot. And then it'll run up and charge something, or it'll try to stand there, pretend it's going to hold its ground because it gets a 4-up armor save and 2 wounds. Right? So they're different.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of like doom and gloom around flash kits. Do you think that that's kind of like overblown?
I mean, it was more of we lost the role what flash kits provided. So the doom and gloom for the role they provided, no, that's very valid. That hurts greatly. Being able to overwatch enemy units, that changed games for me for sure. That I won at events that I would not have won, but there was also events where it didn't come into play. So we'll see what rules that it would actually make it, what matchups it'll make an impact on going forward, and what detachments can actually make up for that.
So I guess it seems like losing characters like Badruck and Zagstruck and the Knob with Wa banner, it seems like those were kind of a big hit to the Codex, right?
Yeah, some people will not say Zagstruck. Zagstruck is just my personal. I love him, but that's not something that was meta defining, right?
Sure.
But the Knob with Wa banner very much was. In our tier list videos, we covered that very early on. That he helps mitigate the fact that we have to call it in the beginning of the battle round, which is a huge detriment that GW has not changed.
Got it. Makes sense. As far as like secondaries go, how do you feel about taking tactical versus fixed?
That's built into your orc list. So we'll say there's a chance that with something like Cult of Speed, you can do fixed. Because you already know you're not really killing things, so you're never going to score those killing secondaries for the most part. So really, you're just saying, I'm going to engage, I'm going to deploy, I'm going to cleanse, I'm going to just do these actions over and over again and hopefully retain primary. So there's conditions that you could do fixed. Let's say you're just playing a stomp, and for some reason the enemy gives you a bring it down, and you're like, well, I'm going to stand in the middle anyways every turn, so let me deploy. You can do that. I would say the best orc lists do have those options, but really tactical is always possible with orcs, right? Tactical is one of those things that we should have enough activations. We do want the additional SAP to be assured in some of these detachments, and we're just one of those armies that really should be able to pull all those off, and we really do. It's just fixed is one of those things that at the top level of play, those guys do understand to just pick fixed, and it means they've done many reps with their list, so they know what what their game plan is going into every mission or those 5 missions at the event. So if
Mhm.
you see that on a competitive list, it's for that reason. He built it into his list. He knows his game plan on each mission where everything is moving, and then they're doing fix over and over again. But that it can be built for, and that can be used at very high level of play. But most people don't play the same list that many times to perfect running the fixed, right? I just wanted to explain that's how it's happening.
Sure.
So,
So most of the time, probably tactical, but if you have like a set game plan, if you can map it out ahead of time, then you can make fixed work.
yes, which is a speed wall thing, like we see WAP asking right here in the
Uh-huh.
Discord about 18 def cop, or no, sorry, in the chat about 18 def copters. But speed
Uh-huh.
wall, because you're not really killing, right, is one of those armies where you're already going into it like, all right, I'm gonna end up here, I'm gonna move block at this part, I'm gonna commit my truck mob here, I'm gonna do the Wartsnagger leap pad, turn 1 here, I'm gonna commit my truck unit to hold the primary this turn, right there. You're already thinking about that in that army, compared to like the knob with the wall, sorry, the bully boys unit, where you're like, I'm just in a stage and you get in punch range and I wall, and then I wall again because I want to stay alive, and then I wall into you, and then whoa, right? It's like, dude, that's more straightforward, right? And that's nothing. That's no harm or foul. It's just that you're doing a different thing. It's totally fine. You're clearing the space so you can do tactical. You're trying to be all over the table already, compared to the fix where you're like, dang, if I draw bring it down, I can't actually bring anything down here. Or we've seen Sean Naden, who did well. Everybody knows he's a Team America captain.
Yep.
He pretty much jokes that says he exclusively plays fixed secondaries. So this is why I'm saying you would play the list. You can do it, but if you see people doing this, understand they've refined their list. They know the missions they're playing, and then they're executing that over and over again. So if you want to do that, that's how you plan for that.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think... So bring it down is obviously kind of like a big issue into some of the detachments. Like Cult of Speed, it's going to be a big issue. Dread Mob, obviously going to be a big issue. Is there any way to like kind of counteract that, or is that just when you go into a game with those detachments, you just have to know that your opponent's going to take those, and you just have to hope that you can score higher than that?
Of course, be aware of the few strats that give you mortal wound output and potential: grenades, tank shock, your little bomb squigs, your new knobs stratagem that allows you to do mortal wounds to people. But as a whole, I would say just front and center, bringing him back into play. The Beast Boss on foot coming down 20 points has become interesting again to me. He was an index staple, and he was one of the first units hit when we started getting our point adjustments in the index, where he went up to 100 points from 80, and then people brought him less and less and less as time went on. Now, I'm not sure if he's still in the meta for that reason, but he's very, very useful at killing different armored detachments, especially if they're hurt already and took a couple wounds from a grenade or a bomb squig or some shooting or some rockets, right? Then he can come in and help finish him off. He does excel in Warhorde, out of all things, but he is very good in the hunt as well by getting proper killing. So those two are the ones that I would say if you're running Warhorde or the hunt. Of course, your Beast Boss on foot is a very viable option there. For that reason. He helps the anti-tank for that reason.
Do you think it's worth maybe taking Beast Boss in like Cult of Speed or Dread Mob?
The Beast Boss on foot, yeah, he's totally one of those guys that you can plug and play into that same same role, and he does come at a cheaper package, right? People like to think they're not power claws are for punching away transport, armor, but in reality, because of their strength being kind of only up to 10. Winning things that are T11 and greater in the Cult of Speed means you do have real potential to bounce, even though they are overall a better selection for that. I'm just saying if you're in your meta and you're slow, you only have X amount of points you want to cut from some of these lists, the Beast Boss is your cheapest bar to entry for a reliable outcome to a certain degree, right?
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. So kind of on that same note, we talked a little bit about Gaz obviously not being like super auto included in any lists. Are there any units that you do think are kind of auto included in every list or close to that?
18 def copters? No, I was kidding. So, it's funny because that was the meme from our list where from our channel where we were talking about 18 def copters being a meta, and that was months before the codex dropped. And then the codex dropped, people was like, look, I actually have 18 def copters.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah, Womp right here saying I thought I had 18 def copters being viable in the Cult of Speed. I would say yes, that's purely through stats though. That's one of those things that you're like, these guys like data sheet stats, meaning these guys have ablative wounds at T5. Ablative wounds means, and the amount of wounds in their per point cost split between multiple models makes them just slightly more durable. That in itself. The strat access giving them a 4-up invuln because I believe it says unit means that's cool. I would say their offensive output is overestimated a lot of the times, unless you are getting within 9 inches. So if you're not getting within 9 inches and you're just trying to stand outside of 9, shoot their rockets, pop the sustain or pop the lethal strat on 2 different units, you're most of the time going to be sad. It's really when you get within 9 inches, they can pull off their offensive output. As for their melee, again, even with +1 to wound, they have no AP. No AP. And of course, volume of dice matter, but hitting on 3s is still a real thing. You're not getting sustained hits for any reason on that. And not having no AP at all is a huge factor, because if a little basic infantry unit has a 4-up save or even a 5-up save, they're going to offset, a third of those wounds that you put through. So you're hitting on 3s and then you're wounding on maybe 4s, maybe on 3s. If it's a T3 wound, then it's on 2s, but it's like, all right, now you're spending CP to punch these little guys away. I guess for the point cost, I guess that can work, but they still get armor saves. 5-up armor saves is still a real thing.
Yeah.
So I would say their offense, don't go charging with them really.
Sure.
I would say just probably more than likely than not, because if you've ever charged with an orc unit, most of your offensive output comes from the knob with the power claw.
Yep.
Am I wrong?
Absolutely. Right? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, like, the big thing with Def Coptas is, they're giving up a lot on Bring It Down. Is that kind of a point where Bring It Down, your opponent's going to max it, and so it's like, whatever, I'm just going to take these guys because they're, like, the best option, even though they're going to max Bring It Down on those?
I'd say yes. For the most part, yes, because most of your list is just going to throw up Bring It Down. The annoying part here is that you're giving it up at, like, a super rapid assured rate, and then that kind of sucks for you, and that's kind of like, oh, okay, now you already have it very early on in the game, and that sucks too. And it's weird for Cult of Speed specifically because they're asking if they're viable. I think you're gonna have to bring stuff that can kill people, because you can delay all you want and play shenanigan-y and move around like other armies do. You got to remember, those other armies actually kill things.
Yeah. If
you're playing shenanigans against someone and they still have 1950 points left because you just killed their scouts, I mean, of course, it's a little more than that, but they only have X amount of, we'll say 1,900 points left because you just killed some scouts and chipped away some infantry with your rockets. Then they're just killing you with 1,900 points for the rest of the game, while you end up having 15 and 12 and 1,000. And then you're like, oh, shoot, you still have 19. You're not doing that anymore. So you do need something that can kill. And it does mean more than just that one truck unit that you're bringing. I would say there is a real margin that you need to bring other infantry that can pass through terrain and threaten the enemy, and kind of trade out charges. When people charge into your buggies or onto objectives and your bikers, you need to punish them and trade those really, really killy units out sometimes. That way you can continue your shenanigans with the rest of the units on the table.
All right.
So R18 Def Cop is viable, yes, but not at a GT level, or I'm not sure at an RTT level winning event. Unless it's something like UKTC maybe, where they have big opening lanes because you can move around. I just feel like there's just other terrains are going to shoot them, and then they're going to get in the way of all your other buggies, all your other units there on the field, your trucks, your battle wagon, whatever you choose to bring. So it's true for wounds, they're a great deal, but what they're doing is you have to learn how to use them properly. So definitely try it and see how you like it.
Yeah. All right. So I guess kind of sticking in Cult of Speed, are there what of the buggies seem kind of like interesting at any degree?
Custom Booster Blasta, I think, is probably one of the better ones, just strictly for support. A lot of people are Shock Drums Dragster hype. I just know the base is gigantic, so really you're just going to plug them into base, like into lanes, and hope that people cannot pass, like, you shall not pass. Or if someone for some reason leaves a giant hole in their backfield, then you're like, haha, I'm here. Hey, so Shock Jump Dragster is fine as well. Not amazing, but he's totally fine. And I'm a fan of Mechatrack Scrapjets. That's just me. They do pretty much suck though, for the most part. I'll just be frank.
Yeah, but they look cool doing it, right?
They look cool, and they're doing more. I have give them a shout out because they can hypothetically give you tank shock and their own mortal wound, and then you can spend CP and get lucky with some rolls and kill something you shouldn't kill. How about that? they can spike in a
There you
great
go.
way. That's why they're on there. But overall, all the buggies are pretty terrible. Rocket Truck Squig buggy is just super trash. GW, why'd you do that to me? That was awkward. I feel like I got violated. Don't do that.
Do you think Cult of Speed is probably like the worst attachment out of all of them?
Yeah, I'd say it's gonna have the hardest learning curve, and it's gonna require the most dedicated of the people to really commit to trying to figure those guys out and playing them. They're lower on my priority list of what I'm going to be playing, even though I love my Cult of Speed army. Is that I really want to get a good feel for what's actually being used in the meta to win. And then, once these mega knobs take a point increase, or maybe gas, or maybe knobs, or whatever, if it becomes oppressive, like the Stompa, of course, is oppressive. Once those things get point increases, the Cult of Speed might rise to shine. But I think a lot of the most skilled players are going to be just running with what's more assured, reliable outcomes, and that will be Bully Boys, Warhorde, and then maybe the Dread Mob in a few circumstances at like RTT levels.
Where do you
and
think?
Of course, Green Tide. But
Okay.
I'll be honest, Green Tide does have some hard matchups that are actually going to be important matchups.
So what do you? I kind of want to get your thoughts on Green Tide, right? Because I kind of see it as it's obviously going to be good into specific matchups, kind of bad in specific matchups. But honestly, to me, it seems kind of boring to play. It seems one, moving around that many bodies is frustrating. But just having a whole detachment that's based around having however much, like 120 of just a basic troop, just kind of seems boring to play. So what do you think about Green Tide?
So Green Tide is my nature, because when I first started the Orks, I only had like 90 boys in an old Gaz model, and that's what I started my Ork and some Grots. That's what I started my collection with. So you are a bit of a masochist if you play with the Green Tide. You like to see your own models get picked up and then get going when you put some back and you get closer and then you charge on someone and then you kill only a couple and they clap you back and you're like, yeah, but I'm still here. And you haven't scored yet. Like it's a weird kind of like masochist thing is as you're getting punished and they're losing, you're like, but I'm going down with you. It's super weird, but it's a real way that Orks like to play. So I'm all for it. What it is that there are some armies that are straight up it's attracted the attention of a lot of different competitive like predators that we already have, and then they tech for that, or they just do the math for what units they need to switch for that, and then boom, they have a couple answers to that, and it comes down to us to outplay these answers. Hearthguard with their grenade launchers and they're being able to do double sustain to pick up multiple units of boys between like the whole Leagues of Voltan army. That comes down to you to not exposing too many, using some of yours being exposed as bait. So they're like, I'm gonna shoot my biker at your mob, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to pull the boy that you've seen, and then I'm gonna surge a little bit out of the line of sight of this other unit that you're going to shoot me with, but I've actually gotten closer to you, and I regen, I've gotten closer to you. Those are the actual ways that you want to play Green Tide. But then, like I said, that comes down to you outmaneuvering their big answers, because something like Necrons with Hypercrypt with the Plansmancer of getting, I believe it's sustained and or lethal, but it's nonetheless, it's crit fives and a high volume of shots for warriors or immortals. They can pick up a bunch of boys and that
sustain 2 on Tesla Immortals. Yeah,
exactly. They're just like, okay, that sucks. I think Grey Knights have flamers and Gatling and storm bolters up the wazoo, as well as it's 2+. Drakari have a bunch of 2+ infantry things as well. Of course, you can get through it, but they have a dumb amount of units for this purpose of charging into you once you're dwindled and then getting there. So it's like the weird right amount of boys, and then it's about having the right amount of boys and other tools. So I can see Green Tide list running 60 to 80 boys and not going for the full 120, and just having enough to like gunk you up, pressure you. They'll pay for battle wagons. They'll throw a weird boy unit up the table and stage him, and then hope they can surge closer to you and hold you in your deployment zone. Stuff like that. They might choose Mandos to stop enemies from getting line from being able to scout with all their Sachitars and shoot at you as you're staged up. But it is a high skill ceiling kind of play where the really good Ork players that are real true masochists and stuff, they'll get in there, they'll figure out the Green Tide. I'm definitely have my boys ready because I just have so many. So yeah, I would say Green Tide is just it's real, but it's also very difficult for you to get the most potential out of it and to start outmaneuvering enemies that have straight up tools for it. So that's why I'm hesitant to put it very high, but I think it's very likely that people will good with it too.
Have you played a Green Tide game yet?
No, I have not, but I have mine ready. So that's what I was going to try this weekend and such going forward. I was going to try Green Tide. I've been enjoying playing with Stampa, Dread Mob, stuff like
Yeah.
that. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I got another unit of Bully Boys going in, but the thing is, I think even 2 has been felt pretty good because the third one, I wonder, like, are you just going to take up if I'm not playing Bully Boys, are you just going to take up space of my killing potential and scoring potential if I have a third one? Because then that third one probably isn't activating on the wall if it's anything outside of Bully Boys. So
Yeah.
2 working good right now. So yeah, we'll see.
Nice. So Murda in chat talking about give tank bustas infiltrate. 1, do you think that fixes tank bustas? And 2, do you think that there's any units in the book that could just use like one little datasheet tweak and they would be really good?
So tank busters could come down drastically in points and still be highly questionable. When you look at the reason probably why GW is point costing them, not besides that they're resin and ugly, but point costing them in a weird way is that, well, they're not ugly models. I mean, their point cost and how they're resin and weirdness and how their data sheet's ugly is they have a bunch of mortal wound and dev wound potential. And so GW seems to be pricing them based off their potential, right? Even though their bomb squid only allows you to activate 1 compared to a Squig Hog Boy unit that would normally let you throw both. This one is very specific where it tells you can only throw 1 at a time. When am I getting both of my bomb squigs off with this very fragile, small unit?
Yep.
Right? It's 1.
Makes sense.
My dev wounds on D3 damage from this hammer? That's weird, right? So GW has them all messed up. Guys having pistols is horrible. As for units that could be swayed into a competitive state, if how much could I change them?
I don't know, like adding a keyword or like
if I could
changing
the Big Mac to being able to go with killicans, I'd be highly entertained.
All right.
Because then I can give them the potential to run through terrain, and this is for fun. That's why I said highly entertained, mind you, right? Because I'd have the potential that my killicans can
because he teleports them. Yeah. Okay.
He can run through walls and units and stuff and makes up for their stupid movement, and also gives them a reroll to advance. So then that would help them as well. So I would say giving the Big Mac the ability to lead killicans is a miss from GW's aspect, and that was just from a fluffy, I'm having fun point of view.
Yeah. I love that Killican, or not Killican, the Big Mac model. Looks really cool. Do you think it's useful at all in any capacity?
If you run him in Warhorde, you can really attempt his fancy shenanigans of running through stuff, because you can go and follow me, lads, and then pop here we go to really activate his mobility in that aspect. Is +2 to his movement, then he gets +2 to whatever his advances that he's re-rolling, so it's a more assured outcome in that sense. So at that point, yeah, he could actually do the thing he's trying to do. In any other detachment, not really, actually, no.
Nice. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I like that model a lot, but yeah, hopefully they'll do some kind of changes.
He has a 3-up armor save, is what I was gonna say.
Oh, he does.
That's not bad considering his whole torso and chest is completely exposed, right?
He's not even really wearing any armor.
yeah.
That's kind of hilarious. I didn't even realize. That's funny.
Yeah, I'm like 99% sure he has a 3-up armor save. So yeah.
All right. All right. Well, I think we can probably start wrapping up a little bit now. Before we do that, are there any other kind of like YouTube channels or websites or resources that you think other Orc players, war bosses could check out?
I would say Red Ones Go Faster. Shout out to you, homie. He understands the game, but he's more of a like hobbyist, maybe how to save a little bit of money here and there. He does say wall with a G. So if you want to go crump him, I'm all for that as well. But as for just his utility to you as a content creator, yeah, he's going to help you with kit bashes. He has good energy. So I very much like him as an individual. So I would definitely say him as someone that I would suggest just outright.
Nice. All right. Cool. Well, I dropped a link to his channel in the chat, so you guys feel free to check him out. One last thing before we wrap up. Are there any kind of, secret tips or tricks that you think the people should know?
So I went over the Zagstruck one.
Maybe anything that you think people are sleeping on a little bit.
Sleeping on. Gosh, it's because orc players are so funny. They're like, I swear, dude, you're sleeping on the Big Mech and Mega Armor, getting the Mega Knobs to re-roll their custom shooter shots. Like orc players are saying that to me, and I'm like, dude, I appreciate you for that saying that right now. I don't know if I'm missing out, but I definitely appreciate that you're doing that, and I'm here for it. So there's there. I would say definitely the Wart Snagger. Sorry, I was about to say Zagstruck again. What's up, dude? I missed you. The Wart
Pour one
Snagger
out.
combo is one. Understanding how to utilize a mob boy unit is something that all orc players should really understand. Is I'm not just running at you with 20 bodies to punch you with 80 punches. It's more about how much of the battlefield I'm taking up and how much of the objectives I'm tagging and how much of your army I'm tagging to delay in. So as weird as it sounds, understanding just how to use a boy mob is something that's really slept on.
Okay.
Always keep in mind the Beast Snagger Boys reroll with Gaz Aura is a real thing, and the War Horde especially for Unbridled Carnage for critical 5s. I would say understanding how to stack in each detachment your mortal wound combination so you can take down these bring it down targets, these things that are susceptible to mortal wounds like a Redemptor Dreadnought is very important for you as an orc player as you're learning orcs. And understanding when to throw your grots at the enemy to delay them or deny a primary is actually very important. And I know these aren't combos, but these are just tips that I think
Sure.
you don't even need to get so fancy because we did cover the Ludas one, SWAT
we did cover a
teams,
lot, yeah.
If we have a SWAT team, something we cover is 2 separate data sheets or sometimes the same data sheet in one truck. So it could be a 5-man unit of knobs with the war boss and then a flash get unit. Boom, that's a SWAT team. Burner boy with the knob, same concept. Do something like that. Take advantage of that. And if you really want to use your trunk as a mobile bunker transport, understand that you can disembark from the mech as the truck comes in from reserves and then give that truck +1 to hit, and it can still shoot and do what thing it's doing, +1 to hit. So that's been around for a long time, but these are things you want to keep now that we don't have flash hits anymore in the back of your head.
These things are a little more important now.
Yeah, understanding how to maximize every part of these phases and movements is going to be more important as it's a thick meta out there, and we aren't exactly the best at killing thickness, and Squig Hog Boys are in a weird place. So we didn't talk too much about Squig Hog Boys, but if you're going to run Squig Hog Boys, I'd say run them in War Horde specifically, or to hunt if you're really doing their shenanigans with moving them off the battlefield or scouting with them, of course. But they do have some very strict limitations in the hunt. So that's why I just say War Horde might be the thing.
Awesome. All right. Well, do you have anything cool coming up on the channel? Any cool videos that you're excited about or anything like that?
So tomorrow we're doing a tier list video with one of the members of Team America, as well as we're going to do another stream on Saturday I don't normally do, where I'm going to break down the Dread Mob. And like I said, I like to talk about all the possible data sheets. I'm not going to just tell you, well, mathematically speaking, the Stomper can kill this. And, even though those are very true, but I'm not going to repeat to you what Auspex Tactics did for us. Thank you, sir. It's going to be more about how every unit that we're going to cover that is applicable to the Dread Mob, what might be considered in a Dread Mob, even if it doesn't have the proper keyword, and so on and so forth. So that's more how I like to do the breakdowns of the units, and we'll just do more of those going forward.
Well, yeah. Make sure you guys check that out. I've got a link to their channel in the description and in the title. I think I dropped one in the chat, so multiple different places for you to find that. They've got a great Discord server as well that I hang out in sometimes. That's linked in their channel, so be sure to join that and hang out there. Any parting words for the chat before we sign off here?
The orcs are looking really good, and I'm glad that everybody's happy. Be true to yourself as an orc player. Don't chase any meta that you hear of. Collect, because by the time you collect that, those max unit of Mega Knobs, they're going to get hit with points, and you're not going to run them anymore, just like people who ran 3 bricks of Squig Hog Boys, right? So strict true to what you want to play, what you're willing to work on painting and everything like that. This codex, what we're going to have for years, allows you to play into those things, and all it takes is GW to adjust some points or come out with something that some predators get taken out in the meta, that the way you want to be played becomes more interesting, right? What if all of a sudden Imperial Knights become super important and you have the hunt and you're just hunting down all their knights and killing them, right? They want to play with their big knights and you're like, nah, the hunt, you run into it, right? So just do whatever you want to do as an orc player. That's the best tip you can get, because the hobbying curve is one of the biggest parts, and learning the basics of the game is the biggest part. So don't stress yourself with chasing a meta, because that's just going to make it harder for you.
All right, couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Make sure you guys tune in on Monday, where I'm gonna give the Stompa another try. Hopefully, it goes a little bit better. So that'll be fun. And thank you, Eddie, for joining us.
Can I say one thing?
Absolutely, go for it.
But there is one thing to keep in mind. Is don't cross the wall, because we
knock your teeth out.
Oh.